Estou passando nesse podcast para dividir uma informação que fez toda a diferença na minha vida. Quer fazer pós-graduação, mas tá impossível correr de um lugar pro outro?
Pois é, ainda mais com o trânsito.
Então você precisa conhecer a educação à distância do Senac. Sabia que é nota máxima no MEC? E tem diversos cursos de pós-graduação para te levar ainda mais longe. 100% online, sem necessidade de TCC e com acesso direto a todos os professores.
Ah, saber isso fez diferença sim.
Inscreva-se já na pós-graduação EAD. Quer saber? Senac EAD.
Today on CityCast Denver, a new poll shows Denverites think Mayor Johnston is doing a pretty good job. Then local politicians are weighing in on the question dividing Democrats across the country. Is Joe Biden the best candidate to take on Trump? And as always, our wins and fails of the week. Today is Friday, July 12th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, before we get to the show, I want to tell you about something super fun we're doing in our Hey Denver newsletter. It's a bicycle scavenger hunt. We're partnering with Bike Streets to bring you an 8-week challenge to get to know the Mile High from 2 wheels. Play along for your chance to win some epic prizes at the end. The first clue drops today. Go to denver.citycast.fm to play along and sign up for the Hey Denver newsletter if you haven't already. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city where Red Rocks workers apparently saw a UFO a few weeks ago, but somehow no one took pictures. Paul, how the world is documented. How did they not?
It's almost like there wasn't a UFO.
I mean, I don't want to.
I'm just saying there might not have been a UFO. There might not have been aliens above Red Rocks that night.
They may not have been the people or the beings in charge of the thing that appeared at the dairy farm either then, huh?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that because you were so annoyed by the thing appearing, the piece of art.
The monolith?
The monolith. That's what people were calling it. Deacon, did you see the monolith?
I have not seen the monolith. I have seen a UFO, and I did not take pictures.
Tell me about it. What's your UFO story?
Wow.
Yeah. So I was, that weird city, it's Greenwood Village?
Uh-huh.
You know how it's like mostly like houses that are also like horse ranches, like hobby horses to horse people. I've never been a horse. I don't know what equestrians. Like it's
Yeah.
So there's very few lights, and it's it's a nice place to see the stars. I was walking through Greenwood Village for weird reasons, and I was with a friend, and he points up, and this was a little over 20 years ago, so I'm looking for graffiti, like just figuring out like who he's trying to get me to point to see. I look in the sky, I see a bunch of lights, and I'm like, okay, that's like a plane flying and like tight. I couldn't see a structure. I just saw the lights, and it's like an equilateral triangle moving very smoothly through the sky, and these little lights rotating around the main lights. And then so if you're imagining an equilateral triangle, one of the points hinges off to make it a straight line. And I was like, that is weird. That is not a thing that things do. And this is before like drones were like a thing that right?
People could have.
We're talking like 99, 2000, right? Mm-hmm. Like not like drones.
Also,
not
you
on the
wouldn't
map.
have a phone camera handy.
If I had I didn't actually own a phone at that time. This is back when like your brother and I had pagers and used payphones because there were payphones on the street everywhere back then. So that's one of the reasons I didn't take a picture of it. But also I think when you're actually seeing something that you're like, I don't have an explanation for this, you forget about technology and sometimes breathing or closing your mouth. Like,
So you're saying it's totally possible in this day and age where we document everything that maybe they saw it and they just in that moment
I'm saying it's actual evidence that they saw something they didn't understand. And also, if they did, then it was definitively a UFO. I hear a lot of times people like kind of dismiss that something was a UFO. They're like, no, it wasn't a UFO. It's like, well, did they see something? Yeah. Did they know what it was? No.
Well, then it's an unidentified flying object.
I guess that's true.
That's the definition.
Something
Paul
can be
is
a
so
UFO
skeptical.
without being an extraterrestrial life form.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
Okay. Well, we have two people on either side of this debate, of the UFO debate, but Paul Caroli, producer of CityCast Denver, is here. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Bree.
And then you've just heard his voice. He's a great guest today, a big thinker, local business owner, friend of mine, a friend of my brother's, as you just learned, Deacon Rada. Hi.
Hey.
So before we get started, we have a little bit of business to take care of. Next week, Paul and I are sitting down with Mayor Mike Johnston at the Colfax Indie Bash. We're looking back at his year in office, and we want to hear your letter grades for Mayor Mike. We want to give him some feedback. So we want to hear what you think, how he's done over the last year. And we're going to average out all those grades in our newsletter, Hey Denver. And it's going to be this whole week-long look back at Mayor Mike Johnston's first year. So let us know what you think. You can give us a call, 720-500-5418 on the Mayor Mike's, a report card hotline.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or denver@citycast.fm if you want to shoot us an email.
And come to the party Thursday night. It's a great venue. Mayor's going to be there. We're going to be there. I think it's going to be a fun night. It was great last year, and I think this one's going to be even better. It was so
much fun. So we'll have a link in our show notes if you want to RSVP to that and come on down, and we'd love to see you. First top story is also about Mayor Johnston. And again, he's officially been in office for a year. The Colorado Polling Institute, which is a bipartisan nonprofit, released findings of a new poll of 409 registered Denver voters this week. The poll looked at the favorability of the mayor, how folks felt about homelessness, affordable housing, higher taxes, and more. I think we're going to start with Mayor Johnston's performance overall. This poll found that nearly half of the voters in this poll, 48%, have favorable views of Denver Mayor Mike Johnston. However, the share of voters who hold unfavorable views of the mayor has grown. It's at 38%. They did a poll back in August 2023 where he was 46%. So it has dropped quite a bit for those that were not happy with him to begin with. Paul, what did you take? This is year one of 4 years for him. What did you take out of this information?
Yeah, I mean, if I was Mayor Mike looking at this, I would be heartened by this feedback from the people of Denver on my performance after a year. I think, it's pretty good amount of people favorable. That's more than our president right now.
True. Higher
favorability, so that's good. The fact that more people are unfavorable about him, I don't know exactly what to make of that. When I saw that, I thought first about the Do Better Denver people, that Instagram account that we talk about sometimes that posts the photos and videos of unhoused people in crisis. And they're just very angry about the state of the city for reasons that are unclear, various reasons. Yeah. So there's always going to be haters out there. And I think whenever you put a policy in place and change things, there's definitely going to be people who are upset about it. But the fact that he's held on to that group of people that have favorable views of him and he hasn't lost those people, that's very positive for the mayor, I think.
Deacon, what did you think about that?
I thought that the survey was really interesting. So folks will have to read it, but the verbiage in the survey, it made a big deal about the comparison to last year, which I think kind of significantly in some places was 11 months ago, not 12 months ago.
Sure.
Right. And it's a very small number of people. I actually showed it to my fiance who's involved in Parkinson's research. So she's constantly doing looking at numbers and studies. And she's their in is 400 and they're talking about single-digit percentage changes from the same survey 11 months ago. This is meaningless data.
Interesting.
Their comments are just with the comparative comments. Now, so when you say this percentage of people are favorable of Mike Johnston, just a flat assessment of this year. It's that means something. It's just a single digit change in a very kind of small sample size. It's
not as telling.
Right. And I recognize you can't start every paper by giving disclaimers about the biased representation in the sample. But it's a small sample size. It's only people who answer their phone and say yes to survey takers. And so a lot of folks do know this, but a lot of folks don't know this. That we hear survey data, we hear these percentages, and we don't think okay, what are the demographic and psychographic considerations of the people who answer phones at all?
In this day and age, right? People answering a number you don't know.
Answering a number they
don't
know. So answering a phone at all. It means I don't answer for friends and family half the time. Numbers I don't know very infrequently.
Let's stop there. Why aren't you answering your mom's calls?
I answer my mother's calls.
Okay.
But I'm working. I get a call from, some of my best friends. Sarah King. A few, I think you've met Sarah King.
Yeah.
Lovely. If I answer that call,
you'll be on it.
I lost an hour and a half. It's gone. Right?
Shout out to Sarah. Sorry, Deacon's not answering your calls.
Right. I call back, But anyway, what I'm saying, a number you don't know, answering your phone at all, a number you don't know, and then someone says, I'd like to
ask you questions.
It's that is a narrow set of people psychographically to begin with. And then on top of that, it's a small number of them. And so I think people should take this with a grain of salt in terms of thinking that this is a representative sample of any kind. And then I think that the percentage value change, given that it's a small sample size, is insignificant. That's my response.
I would also just say this is sort of a honeymoon period still, I think we're in. We're coming up on a year. This is a first year of a 4-year term, but this is also a gentleman taking office after someone had that same seat for 12 years. So I think maybe the optimism is still there, that things will be different. If you were not happy with previous administration, maybe this is still your guy. So I don't know. That's kind of what I took from it too.
Do you have any sense of that in your these people who are calling you and you're not answering? Do you think they like the mayor right now, Deacon?
Well, how many of them are in Denver? I definitely know people that like the mayor. I like his boots. I think he's got great boots.
Boots. All right.
We've
talked about his jacket before.
And his belt
definitely
buckles.
talked about his belt buckles, but I have not thought about his boots.
The man is well dressed.
Yes.
And I don't know how, I don't actually talk to very many people about their favorability for the mayor.
Yeah.
But what I do find often when I talk about, I have conversations with people about elected officials in general who are figurehead type elected officials. So that's the single person at the top of a thing as opposed to a member of a deliberative body, a congressional representative. They're an effigy. Right? If you're happy with the state of Denver, you might credit the mayor if you're generous, but definitely if you're unhappy with the state of things, you're going to
definitely blame.
Like the meth camp Mike. It's like this man's probably never smoked or sold a chip of meth in his whole life. Our problems.
And this
he
is
walked
something
into
that
these things.
Right? I feel like the Do Better Denver folks call him that, right?
Yeah, they totally do.
So
let's talk about downtown. I want to hear what Deacon thinks about downtown.
I do too, because Deacon, I know you've lived downtown at points in your life here in Denver. And so downtown revitalization was something that they asked folks about. And quote, less than half of voters say that revitalizing downtown is a top priority. So 13% of folks that they polled said it was a top priority. 31% said high, but not a top priority. 33% medium priority, 22% low priority. But I think the biggest number here is 13% don't find it, or 13% say it's the most important thing. Is this something you think about as somebody in Denver? You've lived in Denver your whole life. Do you care about downtown revitalization?
Yeah, but I think it's a broken question because when you say, is it a top priority, you're saying is making downtown Denver nice more important than keeping children safe in schools? Which obviously you can lampoon anything.
You can put it up
by
against
saying,
anything.
Think about the kids.
Yeah.
You can just shoot down any argument that way. But
I don't know if you can. I mean, we're talking about dollars and we're talking about opportunity cost. The dollar can't be spent in more than one place. It has to go to one thing or the other thing. So when we're asking people about their priorities, this is something the mayor might look at and say, okay, well, I'm going to spend some dollars. I'm going to spend $90 million on, say, buying the Denver Post building versus spending $90 million on helping kids in a reading program.
Sure. I actually don't think it works that way. For instance, you could spend $90 million buying the Denver Post building in order to help kids learn to read. Right? If you structure it right. So this is, I was a permaculture instructor for quite a while. And there's this, there's a philosophy of redundancy in permaculture, which is kind of the opposite of the capitalist industrial model, or even the socialist industrial model, which is rather than streamlining and determining linear sets of priorities, you create productive redundancies. And so every design that you create, you front-end load the work of creating multifaceted solutions so that, if you are putting in a lot of work to solve one problem, from a permaculture perspective, you screwed everything up. If you're putting in a lot of effort, a lot of money, and you're saying this money should go to this thing because this thing's a top priority, then you already asked all your questions badly, is essentially at the root of it, because you didn't look, we have to look at the whole system and see what feeds into what. So the idea of just that whole, what's the top priority, address that, is actually, I would say, a huge part of the problem.
Well, I don't know if anyone's using exclusively this data to make decisions.
Sure, no, that's fine.
Everyone understands that if you spend money on, say, addressing homelessness downtown, that it will also have the effect of making it a better place to do business. That sort of redundancy is implied.
That's but it's not true. you can spend money on reducing homelessness downtown and make it a worse place to do business. And we have, actually. So, I mean, that example is great.
Do you see that?
Yeah. I think
What's an example of that?
Well, okay, we've spent money on reducing homelessness.
Yeah.
And fewer people are doing business downtown. So in the most straightforward sense, like, I mean, there are tons of vacancies, like there's property available, and we're spending a lot of money on reducing homelessness, right? But we're not spending, and this is kind of one of those like false dichotomy issues where we've got cartoon conservatives and we've got cartoon liberals. You know, on the one side, the liberal voice is saying like, we need to just provide things to the homeless community, and the conservatives, the cartoon conservatives, saying no, we need to make them responsible for their situation. It's like that's a false dichotomy, right? People don't feel whole and content until they have responsibility for their lives, and that's what that's like the truth the conservatives' perspective is leaning into. But you can't take responsibility for your life when you're in a desperate situation, and that's the truth that the liberal side is leaning into. But there's no conflict between those two things. There's an order of operations. Right. And so if we spend money on homelessness in order to just provide services, making like deepening dependence. And I remember I got in this argument with Food Not Bombs once where I was working with Food Not Bombs. And
which is an organization, for folks that don't know, it's an organization that feeds people. I mean,
yeah, that's all they do. It's a bunch of anarchists that basically like mostly pre-dumpster dive and dumpster dive food and then prepare it and feed it to homeless people. There was the tortilla dumpster, which was famous, which was I don't think it's there anymore, but Tortillas Mexico used to have a factory on Santa Fe.
Santa Fe, yeah.
And that place is legendary because they had this amazing boxing gym in the basement and like one of the best boxing teams in Denver. And then they had a separate they didn't put their tortillas in the dumpster deliberately. They put like just ugly. Basically, it was like the ugly fruit basket. They had like the ugly tortilla basket for the community that they set aside, and the tortilla dumpster. It was famous, and I remember getting in this argument where I was just like, "Do any of the people you're feeding know where the tortilla dumpster is?
So they can
have you told them?" Yeah, exactly. Like that. Like just tell them.
Just access where the tortillas are, which has been made by the company. Like we know this is serving the community, so
right.
we're doing it already.
And I actually got the counter argument. If we do that, then people will go there first, and it's just inefficient. It's more efficient this way because we can go and get all of them on a regular basis, and we can feed more people in this like kind of
gatekeeping the tortilla dumpster?
They were gatekeeping the tortilla dumpster, and I'm like, no, tell people where the tortilla dumpster is when you feed them. And, you know, it's like that kind of thing. So it's like, I think that we want simple answers, and we have a lot of simple answers on like all the most famous thinkers about socio-political issues did their thinking in a world with 10% or less the population that we have currently and a much flatter cultural landscape. And we have to look around and realize that even the way we ask questions, the way we deliberate about these things has to be revamped because it's too overly simplistic. We cannot solve contemporary social problems by creating a hierarchy of priorities. We can't solve them by trying to be, you know, there's a great chess player and Go player that I play with sometimes, and Kent.
Shout out to Kent.
Famously beat Larry Christensen 4 out of 5 games at the U.S. Chess Open and was shouted at and called an idiot savant. But we were in a discussion analyzing a game once, and a player asked, well, did I play too conservatively? And Kent's response will always stick with me. He said, you can't play too conservatively. You can only play badly conservatively. And like it applies to everything. He was just talking about board games, but like it applies to everything. It's just like, no, it's like you're not too liberal. This policy is not too liberal. It's just bad. It's just bad. And it starts with bad questions. I'm sorry, I'm ranting.
No,
So go.
I just think the
No,
downtown
that's interesting.
revitalization conversation is interesting because I've often thought, do we as the media and the politicians think too much about it, and people everyday Denverites don't care that much? Or is it something that genuinely is on people's minds? And this poll to me a little bit said it's not really on people's minds as much as maybe we think it is.
Well,
And
the question
there's other
is
things.
it a top priority?
Yeah.
If the
Maybe
question was
not.
asked, would you like downtown to not suck?
Yeah. That would be a different.
You'd get a totally different percentage response. Yeah, I would really like downtown to not suck. Am I going to say it's the top priority when
Yeah.
there are like, people burning my house down? No, it's not my top priority.
Yeah. No, it's fair. It's also context. What is your top priority in your life? Maybe not downtown.
Right.
So, well, hey, Paul, should we do the fun stuff or should we move on?
I think we should do the fun stuff. This will
Okay.
be quick, right? We can do this quick.
Sure.
This
Okay.
This is fun.
We're going to go through a couple of quick questions that they asked that were more fun. And I'm going to have you guys guess what percentage of people answered yes to these. So the poll asked people who participated in these, quote, stereotypical Colorado activities. And the first one was, in the past year, how many of these folks have gone to a concert at Red Rocks? What percentage?
7.
7%?
Of the people polled
In the last year?
Yes.
in the last year,
My personal belief about people who answer their phone for random numbers is that 7% of them have gone to a concert in the last year at Red Rocks. I could be wrong. I'm totally I know that Price is writing badly or something. I don't know.
no, that's it. I like your reasoning, but I think it's higher. I think it's more like 30.
Okay.
You are both way off. It's 60%.
You sure?
So
In the
that's
past
crazy
year?
to me. That's a lot.
That is crazy to me because I've heard statistics that like people go to one concert a year, period. Like the average person goes to one concert a year, but maybe
I guess
this
they
is
go to
they
Red
go to
Rocks.
Red Rocks.
Wait, what was the phone list that was being called from? Were they like calling down the Red Rocks CRM? Or like the Ticketmaster
Also,
CRM?
maybe it's people that have gone there to hike or do yoga or go to the
But I thought the
sunrise
question was a
service
concert.
or- yeah, I guess that's true.
All right,
It is
let's
a
keep
concert.
going.
Anyway,
Okay.
go.
What's the next
You're
one?
right. You're right. Okay. How many of these folks have rode a bike to work, school, or to run errands?
See, I would say this is probably low. I would put this at like 10 or 15. I don't think a lot of people ride their bikes for that kind of stuff here.
But now you got to think it's people
10.
who are going to concerts all the time.
That's a good point. Maybe
So-
it's 15. 15 is my guess.
In light of the last question, I'm going to say. So that last answer totally changes my response. It really is. I'm going to say 60.
You're both totally off. It's 30%.
All right,
30 it's right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Split the
Okay,
difference.
okay.
I'll take it. Okay.
Okay, this one. How many of these folks have drank a craft beer in the last year?
I'm waiting for you, Deacon. You take
Okay,
this
I
one
got to
first.
go first. 60% of them have been to a concert at Red Rocks in the last year, and 30%
are bike
are
riders.
bike riders. That is like, oh man. Let me just.
I know my number.
40.
40%?
40%.
Okay.
I'm saying 50.
Paul, you're the closest, 54%.
All
So
right.
over half of these folks
We were
are
closer
craft
on
beer.
that one, though. I think we're
Okay.
figuring these people out.
You're starting to get
starting
there.
to understand who
Okay.
answered their calls.
We've got two more of these folks. How many have purchased weed in the last year?
Oh, so that's going to be low. I feel like weed is out right now. Weed is passe. Just based on the sales numbers I've been watching, it's down, 10.
10%? Deacon?
No, 20.
20.
I have no confidence right now. 20.
I can tell. You guys are all over the place.
Well, we're adjusting for the answers we're getting. So in the past year,
I don't know
purchased
if I'm
weed.
adjusting as much as spiraling.
Yeah. I mean, that's a form. Anyway, 30.
Deacon, you were closest. It was 33%.
Nice
so a
job,
third of
Deacon.
folks are still
Solid
into
guess.
weed.
Solid guess. 33. Interesting.
A third of avid concert goers are still into weed. Not
who
a
ride their
surprise.
bikes
Who
to
ride
work
their bikes.
and over 50% drink craft beer. This one is probably the most Colorado of these questions. How many of these folks have hiked, biked, skied, or recreated outdoors in the mountains in the last year?
80.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say 75.
75, 80.
Yeah.
You both were pretty close, Paul. You're the closest, 72%. So,
But Price is Right rules, we both lost.
this is true. This is
And
true.
that's how I feel. I certainly feel like I lost.
Yeah, I feel like I lost this game as well.
Okay. Well, listeners, I hope you won. I hope you guessed better than we did.
I think we did all right. We course corrected. It's like that
Yeah.
tightening of the grouping. It's important.
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes if you want to look at more of this data. There's still plenty more, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're talking about the Dems and Biden.
O que acende a sua vontade de começar algo? Tem uma faísca em você que te chama para empreender, investir, dar novos rumos para sua vida. E para todos os seus começos, você pode contar com Santander Select. Um banco mais pessoal, mais próximo, mais humano. Um time de especialistas com olhar atento para cada momento da sua vida. Porque você sabe, só quem já deu muitos passos está pronto para continuar começando. Santander Select. Começa em você, começa agora.
Enquanto você ouve suas músicas e podcasts favoritos, deixa eu te perguntar, você já sabe da novidade do ano? Chegou a nova Fiat Titano. A nova picape da Fiat faz bonito nos terrenos mais desafiadores. Performance com motor turbo diesel 4x4 e câmera 360 graus off-road, que ajudam você a ultrapassar qualquer obstáculo. Sem falar que ela tem a maior caçamba da categoria. Tá esperando o que para conhecer? Nova Fiat Titano, chegou a sua vez de fazer história. Paz no trânsito começa por você.
We're back. We're talking. A couple big Democrats here out of Colorado have been very public about how they feel about Biden right now. But before we get into that, we know Biden did a terrible job at the debate, but where that actually leaves Dems, I don't know. Paul, what's going on here?
What's the situation? Just
Yeah,
the
what's the
logistics.
situation?
Well, we're 4 months out from a presidential election, and these Democrats have been telling us now for months that this is, as they always do, this is the most important presidential election of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy. And so now, after they have reworked the primary rules to clear the path for President Biden to win the nomination again, he has finally had to expose himself to the press and the public. He had been avoiding interviews. He'd been doing a historically low number of interviews and press conferences. But then at the debate, we all saw what's been obviously happening, which is he's a very old man. And
I thought he just had a cold.
well, he had a cold and he was traveling 12 days prior and he was jet lagged. And anyway, for anyone who out there like me, for example, who is, had a family member or a loved one get old in this way and want to continue driving, this is a very familiar situation and it's very difficult to think about. And all these Democrats are now in this position of having to think about whether or not, Biden's the guy we need to stick with as a party to try to beat Trump, or if there's someone else out there that could, somehow we maybe do like a short primary, some kind of blitz primary, I've heard people talk about this, send everybody, Whitmer and Shapiro and Pritzker and Newsom and Polis and Bennett perhaps to Detroit for a week and have them do a debate every day and create the media sensation of our lifetimes. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ideas out here. And these
Why
Colorado,
Detroit? Why?
I don't know. It's just someone threw in Chicago, for example. I don't know.
All right.
Maybe a swing state. Send them to Pittsburgh or Minneapolis and figure it out that way. But yeah, our Colorado elected officials are all in turmoil. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And slowly some of them are coming out and saying Biden should, reassess his decision. But it's his nomination. The delegates are all bound to him right now. So no one can force him to step aside. He just has to sense and make a decision for himself if he wants to. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay, well, let's talk about what some folks have been saying. Some of these So we have Representative Diana DeGette shared a statement on Twitter. Following today's signing ceremony for my bill to modernize American nuclear energy and its workforce, I had the opportunity to speak with President Biden. In our conversation, we discussed the importance of meeting our climate goals, blah, 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 blah. Throughout the ceremony and this conversation, President Biden demonstrated a clear grasp of the issues and the same wit and energy I have seen throughout our nearly 30-year working relationship. I am proud to have such an incredible ally and champion for the American people in the White House. And I look forward to working with President Biden on behalf of my constituents and the American people. So she's giving him the old, he can do it.
Right. So this is a person saying that, DeGette specifically, that Biden demonstrates a clear grasp of the issues.
Yes.
This is a person who believed that magazines were single-use and disposable, advocating that someone else has demonstrated a clear grasp of the issues at hand.
I don't know what you're talking about with magazines.
Oh, rifle magazines. Diana DeGette authored and sponsored an entire bill on the premise that rifle magazines were single-use items.
And they're not?
No.
I don't. You're talking to two people that don't know anything.
Yeah, I don't know what
Okay.
you're
Yeah. No,
saying.
magazines for firearms are not disposable. I've got a bunch of magazines that are 100 years old. They still work just fine. They're boxes.
So you're saying she doesn't understand the issues.
I don't know that she understands any issues. I mean, it's maybe a little bit too harsh, but I don't know that she understands any issues. The only issues that I've ever seen her comment on, sponsor bills on, sit in committee on, she demonstrably failed to grasp key facts of.
So are you saying her credibility here is?
I'm just saying that's who's saying that another person grasps the issues at hand, right?
But how do you think this plays into the issue that people are talking about, kind of that Paul is alluding to, is his age and his ability to do things. And I think she's trying to say his ability is as fine as it was 30 years ago when I first worked with him.
I think it's something we all do, It's if we see ourselves in someone else, if we want to believe that we can do it, so we'll say that they can do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like she said, her 30-year career doing this.
14-term legislator.
14-term, yeah. If she doesn't want to be put out to pasture, then, I mean, it's a natural human response to be I support the person I see myself in.
Well, I think that's the context here that's important. For Diana DeGette, she represents Denver. Denver is a very safe Democrat stronghold. She is not under any threat of being voted out in November, no matter how much the Republican Valdemar Archuleta would love to think he has a chance. He does not. So DeGette really has no incentive to change her position at all, to do anything really here, except to preserve her own career in the long term. Whereas some of these other Colorado electeds, Yadira Caraveo has been conspicuously silent on that. She's in a very competitive district up in northern Colorado. That's the kind of down ballot race that could be really affected if Democratic voters or unaffiliated voters don't feel motivated to go out to the polls to vote on a ticket with Biden at the top.
Has Caraveo said anything publicly?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just wonder, like you're saying, I see what you're saying, DeGette has a safe seat. Would it be bad if she had broken away from the party and said, this Biden is not it? Do you think that would impact her at all?
Well, that's the risk. I mean, you kind of put yourself out there. Maybe you become a target for Biden loyalists or donors who don't want to see the party divided. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people who definitely do, who've been drinking the Kool-Aid about the existential threat of Trump, who are talking to people and having serious conversations about pulling funding from the Biden campaign and directing it to some of these down ballot races to preserve a check on hypothetically Trump's power if he does win.
I think this is a big part of the problem is that what we're looking at here is essentially, because politics is about how our society functions, right? And we have accepted this kind of Mean Girls style, and it's a given. It's unquestionable that this is how it's done, is that we play this it's not about whether or not Diana DeGette believes that Biden is fit to do the job. It's what will she do to keep her position? And the only people that are worthy leaders are the people that don't want to be there, and the people who are very reluctant about taking on these jobs and very and don't have the hubris to avoid fact checking for one, and accepting that this is the common state of affairs is the issue. Accepting that we have an elected representative whose seat is safe despite the fact that everybody can look and see that she's making a calculated decision about which opinions to express. That should automatically disqualify her for the job. And it's not just her. I mean, I sound I'm picking on DeGette, but that's not a DeGette problem at all. That is a much bigger problem. Once someone is identified as making calculated personal decisions about their seat, about their place.
Isn't that what Biden's doing?
Yeah,
sure.
That's politics.
Yeah, that's why he's not qualified for the job. That's what I'm saying.
Well, in your perspective, you're saying that's what would qualify someone for the job for you.
No, it's not for me. It's for this particular objective position. So right. So when you have an objective position, you just have a rubric, a set of rules, and you say if something meets this standard, then X, otherwise Y. Right. So for the set of rules, if a person is more interested in their own position than the position of their constituency, so not from my position, from my perspective, for anyone who believes that to be true, for any evaluation that holds that as an axiom, that if a person is more interested than themselves, than the people who elected them, they are not fit to the task of being an elected representative. If you believe that, then she's not qualified. And neither are, 80, apparently we're not good at percentage guessing, but I'm going to go ahead and guess 80% of elected officials. And so it's not her, it's not Democrats. It's definitely not. I don't want to throw Democrats under the bus here. It is elected officials writ large for the most part. And I think you're probably going to move on to the Bennett, but I think that the Bennett case shows us a hint of something different. So
let's talk about Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett told CNN, for me, this isn't a question about polling. It is not a question about politics. It's a moral question for the future of our country. And he said, warning that a Trump victory would be a, quote, American tragedy. And he suggested Republicans may win control of Congress, too. I think we could lose the whole thing.
So this is our senior senator from Colorado. He just won his election, a 6-year term back in 2022. So he really doesn't have to worry about his seat and his prospects for the future.
And yet he's taken a different position.
Yet he's taken
also
a different
from
position.
A safe seat.
And he was the first senator to do so. Like no other senator before him has come out and said publicly. Now, conspicuously, he's not calling on Biden to resign or to pull out of the race. He's just saying Biden will lose.
Yeah,
which is
interesting.
Interesting.
I think something that's very important that actually came out in the interview specifically. And I have a friend who went through this a very related issue. So he's being interviewed by a reporter from CNN. I believe her name is Caitlin Collins. Maybe?
Caitlin Collins, yeah.
And she asks him right off the bat, are you asking for Biden to pull out of the race? And his response, I think, is incredibly important. And I really wish that everyone who believes in the Democratic Party or either of the major political parties would really listen to that response.
We have to defeat the malignant figure that is Donald Trump, though, for us to be able to address the issues that we need to address.
But you don't think that Joe Biden can do that. So how can you not call on him to drop out of the race if you think he'll lose to Donald Trump?
Well, look, we're all here this week to have this discussion, to have this debate. I'm sure President Biden has a different view of his prospects in this election than I do, but we should be having a discussion about that. And the White House, in the time since that disastrous debate, I think has done nothing to really demonstrate that they have a plan to win this election, that they have a convincing plan to win in the battleground states where we have to win in order to win this election.
So
they need to do that.
He answered the question immaculately and completely, but it didn't satisfy the interviewer. So he's basically just said, that's not the process. The process is the party needs to have that conversation and Biden needs to reflect himself on it. That's the correct process. That is a complete answer. Here's the point. Process is very important. And everyone who is concerned about a Trump victory, Bennett included, is concerned, one of the chief things that I hear over and over and over again is he flouts process. That's a big deal. And it can't just be a big deal when our opponents do it. It's like free speech, and which has been a really weird one for me because I was first introduced to free speech absolutism by Joyce Meskis and Two Live Crew. Right,
former of Tattered cover, Joyce Meskis.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And former rap group of the 90s.
Two Live Crew, Ed Jello Biafra. These are the people I think of.
Lead singer of the Dead Kennedys.
Yes. Those are the people who introduced me to the concern for free speech. And now it's a conservative issue, right? And many of the same people who rallied behind, and definitely the same psychographics that rallied behind free speech absolutism in the past are now opposed to it. And if it's not free speech when someone says something we don't like, it's not free speech, right? And it's the same thing with process. The process actually has importance. It doesn't come above certain principles, above principle. But when Michael Bennett pointed to process and his interviewer just kept on leaning on the question, that was the choice that we all have to make as citizens. What kind of political engagement do we want to have? Do we want to be bullies, or do we want to be sober, undramatic, process-driven deliberators who figure things out, right? And that's the thing that I see as being on offer. If we just push Biden out of his seat, if he gets railroaded, then it's not necessarily even better than a Trump presidency.
Well, that's not an option. That's not possible.
It's ultimately up to him.
It's his decision to make.
Everything's possible. I mean, it's not possible on paper, but lots of things.
I
behind the
suppose
scenes.
if like Gavin Newsom called in the California, I don't know, state police and marched on Washington and did his own January 6th, I'm not saying he's going to do, like, I guess everything's possible, but that's the situation we're looking at. None of these Democratic leaders are talking about like forcefully removing him from the ticket or like calling on county clerks to scrub his name off of the ballots. What we're talking about is trying to convince this aging man to give up power that he's struggled and fought for 50 years.
Sure. Yeah, sure. And I'm just saying it needs to be done actually. And this is, again, not an endorsement for Michael Bennet. It's just that he pointed to a thing that, and just to even it out here, I've heard Nick Freitas, so just to throw a Republican in the ring, point out the exact same thing. We have to be deliberative about it. And there are a lot, I mean, I don't think, January 6th didn't work for Trump. The way that Biden would be pushed out would be much more subtle. It would be, actually just if a few of these major leaders just said like, oh no, he's going to lose. And just like that open and large lack of confidence could push him out of the race, right? There are a lot of little, politics works by little tricks. These big, and that's one of the reasons I'm not as worried about Trump, I think, as like Bennett, is because like we do as yet right now have a lot of checks and balances in this country, and there's a lot of things that Trump wants to do that he didn't manage to do. Biden ended up doing some of them, and the same thing happened with Obama. It's not just Biden. With regard to like immigration and things like that, Obama ended up doing a lot of things that Bush wanted to do. And if we continue to feed into the Mean Girls style of politics, right? Mean Girls, the movie,
Bullying,
bullying, right? But that specifically that like catty, manipulative, underhanded, that style of politics, then we're never going to get to a place where, like on the congressional floor or in any theater, there's actual discussion. There's always just going to be tribalistic leveraging, and we won't solve any problems that way. There are zero contemporary problems that can be solved through this tribalistic force against force opposition.
Provocative.
I think that's a good place to leave it.
I think so too.
We're going to be thinking about this all the way through to November.
Yeah, Deacon, you have to come back and talk to us about ranked choice voting. I want to talk to you about that sometime.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have thoughts on that.
Yeah. Later.
Yes.
Well, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, our Rocky Mountain highs and lows of the week. All right, we're back. It's our wins and fails, our Rocky Mountain highs and lows of the week, things that ruled, things that sucked. As always, we start with fails so we can end on the good stuff. Paul, what's your fail this week?
I got a really funny fail.
Okay.
I saw this, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife account on X posted this. Apparently an 80-pound black bear broke into the Ren Fair at Larkspur and was found hiding under the honeycomb shop playing with a ball.
I thought we were starting with fails. I think
sounds like a win to you.
That bear won.
I mean, I guess, the bear did win. It's a fail, I guess, for the Ren Fair.
Sure.
I don't really
He
feel...
went to the right spot in the Ren Fair,
yeah,
though.
because they're going to be talking like Ren Fair. You've met Ren Fair people, right?
Yeah.
They're going to eat this up.
You think they'd like this, that there's a bear in there?
I mostly hang out with the rogues. Yeah, they're going to be into it.
No, I think it's going to be scary. Scary big bear?
Yeah.
Okay. They got their swords and their lances and stuff. They've been waiting for this.
They got a horn they're going to blow. Charge. It's going to be
Gives
great.
him something to do, to be part of the unscripted part.
Yeah.
So
I thought this was funny.
He broke in. He ate some honeycomb.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was hurt. And then CPW came in. They posted some pictures of him. Like they carried the bear out in a sling. I'm sure they gave him a tranquilizer or something.
But they didn't kill him. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fail for the Ren Fest, win for this bear, I guess.
Win for the bear.
I'll go really quick. Herman's Hideaway closed a couple weeks ago for renovations, but they are sort of ending their 60-plus year career as a spot for mostly rock music, actually in the last couple of years too, hip hop as well. But it was really a spot for local bands for a long time to play, and it's just a bummer when we lose a venue that serves a community. However, it's going to reopen as a Latin dance club, so it may have a new life that's equally fascinating. But
same owners?
Yeah, I think it's still the same.
Interesting.
That's a very interesting choice.
It really is. It's such a big jump, but it's...
How close are they to Maria's Empanadas? It's like 2-3 blocks?
It's not far.
It's not far?
Yeah.
Is that where it is down on South Broadway? I've never been to Herman's Hideaway.
Yeah, it's down like South.
There's like
South Broadway.
kind of a little, it might become a little district. Just a little.
It would be cool.
Yeah.
Like
So
Maria's
this
is great.
could also be a fail that's a win too. Friend of the show, Gil Asakawa, wrote a great remembrance of Herman's Hideaway because he was a music critic here in the 80s. And he had a different perspective that I didn't experience. So it was just really cool to read. But sad that Herman's is ending this era. Cool that it's having maybe a new life in a different direction musically. Deacon, what's your fail?
Arsonists.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So firebug set my house on fire. Vicariously set the neighbor's house on fire, which caught my house on fire. And I've been dealing with that. And then looking at the news and talking to our contractors, they're very busy right now.
The arsonists.
No, the contractors, the remediation contractor. And because the arsonists, they're also busy.
It's a booming business.
It's well, I don't know if they're making any money. I mean, I think the guy that set my neighbor's house on fire, which if it wasn't my neighbor, was a guy most likely paid by my neighbor. They're making money because the cops they can't investigate anything where no one was hurt, and they're like at this point just starting to admit that. They're just starting to tell you, like dispatch will even tell you, like nobody's hurt. We're not sending anybody, like because they're overwhelmed, and it's to give them, like, I'm not trying to pin this on them. It's like they're way, way understaffed. So yeah, I'm bummed about crime. Not the fun victimless crime that your brother and I used to do, but like the real crime. It's bumming me out right now.
I'm really sorry about that, man.
Yeah.
That sucks.
It does. I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing
No,
at
we can laugh at
and my
it.
brother
I
committing
need to
crimes
laugh
as
at
young
it.
people.
I have to laugh at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that happened, though. It does suck. I mean, Paul, can you imagine?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
I can't. So, well, I'm sorry about that. Well, let's move on to some happy things. Paul, what's your win this week?
My win this week goes to dog lovers. They scored a big win up in Westminster with the Westminster City Council giving an initial approval to a plan to establish the metro area's largest off-leash dog park near Stanley Lake.
Huge.
This has been a fight for months that we've been watching. So it's the dog lovers on one side. Apparently more than 750,000 people per year go there, take their dogs out to this place.
Holy cow, that is a lot.
But then on the other side, the losers, unfortunately, in this situation is the environmentalists who were talking a lot about, how this was a habitat for burrowing owls and bald eagles and native shortgrass prairie. And, the dogs are going to make that harder for those burrowing owls. So that's unfortunate, but it seems like a resolution. And yeah, dog lovers get a win.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Because I actually remember I worked a campaign. I used to work for the Green Party, and I worked on a burrowing owl campaign. It was really tough. Yeah. It was tough to explain because you basically never see them. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. Yeah, and they're owls. Like it's a combination for like
never.
Yeah, no one
mythical animal.
So yeah, like talking to the public about the importance of this thing is like I've never seen one of those.
Yeah, like, sure. There's such thing as a burrowing owl.
It's very difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult to sell. So yeah, I'm a little torn on that one as a dog lover. I've been exploring more dog parks now that I've got a family on the move. I'm actually really enjoying way down south. Never would have gone to it before. There's a dog park. It's by that the public ice rink. What is it? It's got a really generic name. It's like the South Suburban.
Oh, South Suburban?
Yeah, South Suburban. That dog park is lovely. It's fantastic. Lots of friendly dogs there.
Great rec.
Yeah. So I watched some lacrosse. I don't watch a lot of lacrosse. But
isn't that the best when you just like stumble into a park and there's some sport happening that you don't really understand?
It's a bunch of like really enthusiastic kids throwing a ball really fast. It's like, wow, this doesn't happen on East Colfax.
I went to Catholic school near like Crestmore and Hilltop.
Yeah.
Lacrosse was a big
It's a big thing.
Lacrosse is big. Sometimes there's people playing rugby in the park near me, and I'll just like sit down and watch them practice rugby. It's so interesting. I wish I knew the rules.
Hit them.
Just hit him. That's what it looks like. Hit him, throw the ball around, run around.
I don't actually know either. I don't know anything about rugby. I've never played rugby.
It's really fun to watch.
Well, win for dog lovers.
Yeah, Bree, what about you?
Cherry Cricket's opening another location in Broomfield. This is their 4th one. The rendering of it looks beautiful. They've recreated the sign, the Cherry Cricket sign from the original Cherry Creek North location, which unfortunately will be going away in some capacity. But
they're redeveloping it. It's not going to close. They're going to build a new.
They're going to build a new one. And honestly, hearing the explanations of what running that kitchen was like in the Cherry Cricket in Cherry Creek was tough. I can see where it would be a boon, probably for the cooks too, like to be in a nicer spot. But this is a spot in Broomfield. They're taking over in old Chicago. And I just, we have to talk about restaurants closing all the time. It's so awesome when restaurants are not only staying open, but growing. And I think it's cool to see a great burger place like the Cherry Cricket continue to grow. So that was my win. Deacon, what's your win?
Not to be redundant, but I want to shout out Paul Davis. It's a company. I'm assuming there is a person, Paul Davis. I don't know if they're still around, but it's our restoration company, and they've actually. I was really hesitant. I'm kind of an insular person. I don't let a lot of people into my house, and so I was really not stoked about this process.
Yeah,
and they've been great. So
you have a good contractor.
I have a good contractor. Very good contractor.
That's a win
and so
in itself.
Since I know the arsonists have been busy, maybe somebody listening will, unfortunately, soon need these services. And so I'm recommending Paul Davis to anybody who has a similar problem. They also do flood and mold, and it's all disasters.
Paul, you're in the middle of a mold situation. Call Paul Davis.
Call Paul Davis.
If I have to
They're
talk
solid.
to another mold remediation company right now, I'll blow my brains out. I'm so upset about it.
Don't do that. It's just another bill. It's more remediation.
You're right.
Brains are hard to clean.
Well, shout out to Paul Davis. Paul, Deacon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Bree. See you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Paul Caroli, Olivia Jewel Love, Selena C.A. Reynolds, and Francisco Kilgore. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, and Adrian Gonzalez provides emotional support. I'm your host, Bree Davies. Our music is by Los Bogochetes with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell your favorite dumpster diver about us next time you see them. You can sign up for our daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you next week. Olivia's back in the house.
Hey guys, welcome back to my blooper. Just drop the microphone. Like and subscribe. The end.